Hey friends, Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. Today we're looking at the 2017 Hyundai Elantra. It's all new for this year, completely redesigned inside and out, and it's got a lot of new features too. A lot of new tech features as well as a new engine. So it's got a lot of things to offer for 2017 that it didn't for 2016, and my question is it better? So at first blush, when you look at this thing, the first thing that hits me and might hit you is the fact that it really does look very much like the Hyundai Sonata, only they just sort of scaled it down a little bit. Since Peter Schreier came from Audi and has now head of design at Hyundai as well as Kia, one of the things he's done is sort of adopt the same sort of model that Audi had when it came to having all of their cars share the same design language, only different sizes, and Hyundai's really sort of adopting that in their own model range too, because it's got the same facial features, it's got the same grille as you're going to find on the Hyundai Sonata, only a little bit smaller. And this is the Limited, so you've got a little bit more bright work up here, and you'll also see down here in the lower grille there's actually the radar sensor for the radar-based driving aids like the cruise control, the automatic braking, and some of the other things we'll get to here in a minute. Now, because this is a Limited, it also has the top-end headlights. These are what they call light bending, which means they turn with you at night, HID headlights, and then of course there's also down there in the lower fascia a set of stacked LED driving lights that really sort of set the car off during the daytime. And the other big thing you're going to notice here on the Limited that you're not going to find on the lower trim grades is the 17-inch alloy wheels. Now, one thing to point out on these, you can get alloy wheels on the other trim grades, on the lesser trim grades, but one thing if you're really looking for fuel economy that I noticed when I was going over all of the information is the fact that when you do get these largest wheels, it cuts down the MPG ratings by 1 MPG. The other thing that's really notable here between this Hyundai Elantra and the last generation is the fact that, well, the lines are just a little bit more conservative, I say. It's more sophisticated. It's more, you have more straight lines, less swoopy-doopy kind of stuff like the last generation had. The fluidic sculpture that was really known in the last generation of Hyundais has really sort of gave way to a little bit more straight-lined approach here. But there are premium trim elements here. You've got these nice mirrors with lights built into them. They look premium on a car like this. When you come back here, that line just sort of slips up just like it does with the old Hyundai, but in a slightly different way. Out here at the back of the Elantra, you can see that they've actually sort of crafted some of the same lines and some of the same design DNA from the last generation into this one, especially from the wheel as you move around this corner here. It definitely says Elantra if you're familiar with the old one. But we've got new taillights here with 3 elements that really light up nicely at night, and the look is just a little bit cleaner, especially the way this line cuts right into that tail light. It's very clean, it's very crisp. This car really comes off as a more mature, grown-up version of the last generation Elantra. Like the exterior styling, the interior, it's been redesigned and it's more mature looking. It doesn't have the sort of artistic swoops and the flowing lines that it used to have. This is a more square, upright, sort of conservative approach, I guess I'd say, to interior design compared to what Hyundai had before in this. It's still very pleasing, and just like the exterior, it really looks like a downsized Sonata in here. The dash design's almost identical, just smaller. Now the materials in here, this is a basic car, so we've got hard plastic over here. There's hard plastics where you put your hands in most places, with the exception of the armrest. And even the top of the dash is a little bit soft, but it's still a little bit harder than normal. Because we're in a premium one, we've got leather here. We do have leather on these seats. Cloth comes base, but in this case, I think the leather seats kind of feel a little bit on the less leathery side. They're almost rubber, vinyl. One thing I can tell you about these seats is they're very comfortable. They're supportive, they're firm, very European in feel. I do have power over here with memory settings for the driver, but the passenger does make do with a manually adjustable seat. The switch gear is actually of a pretty high quality here on the steering wheel, on the center stack over here, even on the door panel, the window switches, the door locks, everything like that. It has a pretty high quality feel to it. The center stack, well laid out. The drive mode switch is down here. The heated seat controls are here. And down here in the bin, you have plenty of room for your phone. And you can even shut the cover there when you've got your phone buried away. A lot of cars don't even give you a place to put that. And with that, you have two 12-volt outlets down there, an auxiliary port and a USB port. Storage in here is actually pretty good as well. You've got big mat pockets on the doors. You've got the bin here in the center, as I mentioned. And the center console box is pretty sizable. I've got a bottle of water in there. I could probably put two. And there's a USB port in there as well. So if you wanted to put a device in here and charge it up or just leave it in there, there's plenty of room for that. Now your rear seat passengers, they're going to know they're in a compact car, but it isn't cramped by any means. These seats right here, they're about halfway between forward and back, and I've got about an inch between my knees and the backs of those seats. The seating position's a little bit on the low side, but it pretty much is in all these cars. My knees are a little bit perched up. If you have kids back here, smaller people, less than 5'8", 5'9", they're probably not going to have that problem. Now there are a couple of things I want to point out. This is the Limited, so I've got heated seats back here. That's not something that all the cars in this class have. Kind of a nice feature with the Limited, but what it doesn't have, there's no vents back here for the HVAC. Here in Arizona, that's a big deal because when it gets hot, you want your AC no matter where you're sitting. There is, however, fold-down armrests with cup holders, and these seats, of course, do fold down in a 60-40 split, so you can put big items in through the trunk if you're going to Home Depot or Best Buy with a new TV, anything like that. And speaking of that trunk, it's pretty sizable for this class at 14.4 cubic feet. That makes it actually larger than most of its competitors, with the exception of that new Honda Civic. And under its floor, and I always like to point this out, is a spare tire. Now, this well down here actually looks like it's large enough that you could put a full-size spare in here, say if it's wintertime or if you just prefer to have that. It appears that there's space here for it. Overall, I think they've done a pretty good job with this interior for its price class. Some of the materials, yes, they're on the cheaper side, but this is an inexpensive car. Overall, I give the interior 4 stars. So one of the features this car has is the Ultimate package. It is basically the top package you can get that has all the new safety features, that being the automatic emergency braking and the smart cruise control. It's radar based. There's a camera also for the lane keeping, but this system basically, you can set the cruise control, it monitors your distance, and it can brake the car, it can speed up or slow down based on the distance in front of cars. It can also automatically brake if it thinks you're going to hit something. And worth noting in this car is it freaks out. Now, like right here, I've got these little sticks here in the lane next to me. The other night I was coming down this very stretch of road with the cruise control on, and these sticks that are on the side here caused this car to freak out and hit the brakes as I was going 65 miles an hour down this road. Luckily, the car that was behind me didn't hit me, and I was able to hit the gas. It really scared the crap out of me, but I was able to hit the gas and override the thing and get back going again. And it's just something that's worth noting. I'm not really complaining about it, but all of these autonomous systems that we're starting to get in cars now, they are fallible. And in the Hyundai and Kia vehicles, it's something I've noticed they're a little bit quirky. They're not exactly, I hate to say they're not trustworthy, but there's been a few times in their vehicles where these systems have freaked out and hit the brakes thinking there was an emergency when there was absolutely nothing in front of me. So it's just something worth noting since we're talking about the tech. This infotainment system that's in this is really one of the best in the business. Both Kia and Hyundai both have one of the better systems, especially in less expensive cars. There are more expensive cars out there that have systems that aren't as easy to use as this. The best part about this, you have the touchscreen, but in addition to that, you've got hard controls for things like your radio volume, your tuning, and you've got menu buttons that sort of fast track you so you don't have to page through a lot of those menus. Same thing down here with the HVAC. They haven't forced you into the touchscreen up there, and that's really the way I like it. And connectivity, well, you've got Bluetooth, you've got Apple CarPlay, and you've got Android Auto, so you've got everything here. That is 5 stars for connectivity. When you put everything together with this technology, you get 4 stars total. In our limited tester here, the engine is brand new for this year, a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine with 147 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque. Now, you can option this car in the Eco version. That has a 1.6-liter turbocharged engine with a little bit less horsepower, but significantly more fuel economy. and 60. Takes a little bit of time to get there. This is 147 horsepower and now what they call a mid-size car. So this isn't, nor has it ever meant to be a performance car. It has 6-speed automatic transmission. You can get a 6-speed manual with it in the base model. One thing I'll point out here is this has a drive mode selector down here. You can have eco, normal, you can have sport. I have it normal right now, and I sort of discovered in my week with this car that it's really a marketing switch because it doesn't add performance. If you put it in eco, it just takes away performance. Sport gives you the performance feel that you should always have, and normal sort of, it's a balance between eco and sport. But this engine, even though it's not all that powerful, it's pretty quiet and refined. That I have to give it. It's definitely quieter and more refined than the one that used to be in the old Elantra, which is a little bit more on the agricultural side. Now, fuel economy, this one in this car with these tires and wheels, it's rated at 32 mpg combined altogether. I was able to achieve 34 mpg combined in my week with it. And interestingly enough, I tried eco for a few days and the mileage actually seemed to be a little bit less than just leaving it normal. And I think that's because in eco, it softens the throttle response so much that you really feel like you have to floor it to take off because it feels like it's chained to a house. So just food for thought. It just depends on your driving style. I tended to need to really lay my foot into it quite a bit more in the eco mode just to get out in traffic and not feel like I was going to get hit. Now, overall though, this is a much more refined powertrain than the one it replaces, and that's really where the meat of this is, because this is a new car. We want to find out, if you have one right now, is this one going to be an improvement? And I think it is, so I give the powertrain 4 out of 5 stars. When it comes to ride and handling, they did offer quite a few improvements to this car, and that started with the stiffer chassis, more high-strength steel. It started with a more sound-deadened chassis. They put a lot more sound deadening in the floor, in these pillars, in the firewall, and that all contributes to a much quieter ride as I'm going down the road here, and that's something I noticed out on the freeway, over a noisy freeway pavement, as well as around town hitting bumps. They've also added some additional rubber and plastic bushings to the suspension subframes. All of these things make the car feel a little bit more hushed, a little bit more quality. It makes it feel less tinny, like a tin can, and that this car does not feel like. The steering, Hyundai and Kia, not always known for the best steering feel out there as you're rolling a car under curves and things like that, but it's got a nice light weighting to it. It's not too heavy. In other words, it's not trying to give you a sporty feel that just isn't there. It's just normal. It's mature. I think we've said that before. But the ride is just a very comfortable car to ride and drive, and just like the engine and the transmission, I think it's very competitive. It's right in line with quite a few of the other vehicles. I think it's actually a little bit more civilized, a little bit more refined in here. Feels of a higher price than 2 vehicles that I can come up with. One's the Ford Focus, the other one is the Toyota Corolla. Those 2 vehicles tend to feel a little bit, less than premium when you're out driving them around. So in that way, I give the chassis 4 out of 5 stars. When it comes to quality score, this is really middle of the pack in my opinion. The only thing I could really complain about was when you slam the doors, they do feel a little bit on the, the hollow side. But for the most part, the fit and finish, everything that you would look at as far as how things fit together inside and out, middle of class. I put it at 4 stars. Well folks, rounding it up for the Hyundai Elantra, let's have a look at the specs. Now as you can see on this one, 34 mpg, we did very well on mpg, more than the window sticker promised, and that is pretty good for a sedan in this size range. It's, well, I'd say it's competitive. Now looking at the price here, again, competitive. We're at $27,000, we're virtually fully loaded. But the thing I want to point out here as I get to putting a value score on this thing is the fact that it starts out at $17,000. We've got $10,000 of options on top of that. And the thing about it is, to me, it doesn't feel like $10,000 more car than the base level Hyundai Elantra. The base level Hyundai Elantra comes pretty well equipped. So other than a nicer infotainment system, a number of options inside, the leather seats, sunroof, nicer wheels and a few things like that, to me it just doesn't feel like $10,000 more car. So as tested, I put the value at 4 stars. When you put that in with everything else we've already talked about, that makes it a 4-star car. I'm Sam Haymart for Test Driven TV. I hope you enjoyed the ride. Does anyone remember the first Hyundai that came to North America? This was way back in the early 90s. It was a very inexpensive car, and I know everyone can Google it, but I'd like if anyone just knows what it is, just put it in the comments and see if you know, and what the starting price was. It was one of the cheapest cars on the market, save for the Yugo at the time, and nobody wanted to buy that because it was really dreadful. But in addition to, do you know what the first Hyundai was? Do you know what company rebadged the car and sold it with another name, and what was the name of that car? At the same time, they were both on sale at the same time. Anyway, car trivia. If you like the test drive you just saw, click on the link right there on your screen, the big red bar. I point to it, but I didn't want to hit the bicyclist I just passed. We test drive 1 to 2 cars a week, and we have a new video every couple of days, so there's always something new. So stay tuned.